All right, guys, welcome to the Wednesday Directions. Doing notes on the rest of the Mongols and kind of finishing up the one of the last dynasties for China. So yesterday we watched the video. Tuesday or Monday we did the reading guide, so we know a little bit about these guys already. So we know that the Mongols, their ruler, their first like I would say famous ruler, their most famous one is a man named Genghis Khan, but that's not really his name, right? That's just his title. The Genghis Khan just translates to universal ruler, and we know that his name is actually Temujin. All right, so he rules for a long period of time. We know they're from the steppes. Basically, in Central Asia, they have the Great Plains, like we have in America, except it's in Asia. And we call it the Great Plains here, but over there they call them the steppes. So that's where they come from. They come from these grass-covered plains in Central Asia called like the steppes. A lot of people call them the Russian steppes, but that's where they come from. So Genghis Khan is the universal ruler because he's the person who's going to be the first to unite all of the Mongols. Um, and then basically from this point on, he just starts his conquest, as you can see. And we know that he's very successful and he's very ruthless as he does it. So here's a picture of the Mongolian steppes. Like I said, looks just like the Great Plains, right? You can just imagine the Rocky Mountains in the background. So that kind of gives us a good idea of what we're talking about. The Mongolians, since they live on the Great Plains, they're like a nomadic people, so they're always kind of following their food. So since you're following your food all the time, you got to be able to pack up and move quickly. And one of the ways they do that is by making sure that their, we'll call it shelters, or their houses are movable. So they're kind of these tents that are set up. They're called a yurt. It'll be on the quiz. So since they have this yurts, this is a more modern one, obviously, with the bicycle there. I don't think Genghis Khan's rolling through on a bicycle. But the yurt's able to help them be quick and be able to adapt and move fast to A, when you're conquering people, but B, when you're just trying to eke out a living. Genghis Khan gets called the Golden Horde for a few reasons. Basically, once his reputation is high enough and people realize that he's very cruel and if you don't do what he says, it'll be very painful for you. Um, they start to basically just say, yep, you can just pay us and we will not sack your village and kill everybody. And so people normally try to pay as much as they can until they run out, and then Genghis Khan and his men show up and basically do what they do best. Um, One of the ways that they're able to be so successful and so ruthless is that they're on horseback and they have stirrups, and their main thing is archers that are able to shoot on horseback. It's a hard skill to master, but if you can do it, it gives you a great advantage because now you're more mobile, you're faster, you can move on the battlefield, you can relocate on the battlefield. It gives you a huge advantage. And obviously, the Mongolians are great horseback riders from being on the Great Plains, so they are always on horseback, and it's really a big advantage for them. All right. With the Golden Horde, a lot of people consider it too that a lot of their, armor or stuff that they use is gold from all the taxes. But just imagine, you have 30,000 people with this type of horseback, horse saddle coming down you. And you got the sun shining in. It's glaring. It's glistening. It's quite a sight to see. So that's another reason why they kind of get the nickname the Golden Horde. It's kind of like a wall of shimmering gold coming down upon your village, and and they know that it's just going to end in a massacre. All right. As you can see, they're basically like the invasions are everywhere. If you're in Asia at this time, the Mongols, you've heard about them. You know someone that was attacked by them, or you were attacked by them personally. So Mongols as rulers, Mongols rulers are tolerant of other people's culture. So once they conquer you, you do not have to change your culture. You just have to pay the tax. So very similar to like what Persia did in ancient Greece. So some Mongols adopted local ways, leading to a split. There's a peaceful period called the Mongolian Peace. We know it as Pax Mongolica. And this is where the Mongols stop invading, and it's like a time period where they're not killing everybody, and they spend a lot of their time making sure that the Silk Road is able to be safely traveled. All right, so because of this time and this period of peacefulness, a lot of trades able to occur unbothered or unhindered. An exchange of ideas during this period as well as people are moving up and down the Silk Roads safely, and more people are doing it than before. So the one interesting thing about uh, the Mongols is that they actually end up becoming their own dynasty in China, and we'll talk about that now. So Genghis Khan dies, he gets sick, and we saw from the video, right, that the people who they didn't want his tomb to be widely known. They wanted to keep it a secret. So when he died, they had like 10 people bury him, and then they had 10 people kill those 10 people, and then the 10 people that killed those 10 people were killed by another 10 people, and this kind of system or cycle repeated itself until basically no one had a clue on where he was buried. All right. And then the next person who takes over, that's of note, is his grandson named Kublai Khan. All right, so he becomes the great emperor after Genghis dies. One of his claims to fame is actually conquering China. And once he conquers China, he decides that he's going to run China. So we call this period called the Yuan dynasty. So the Yuan dynasty is just a Mongolian dynasty. As you can see, they're in control for like 100 years. And during this 100 years, it's a time of peace, prosperity. It's a pretty good time for the Mongols. And another thing they want to do is Kublai Khan's not satisfied just running China. He wants to now invade Japan. So he kind of sets up base in Beijing. And when he decides that it's time to take this one step further, it's time to invade Japan. Obviously, there's some water in between China and Japan, so they're going to have to take some ships. Now, this is where we get the word kamikaze from. Right, this story I'm about to tell. We know kamikaze from like World War II, right? The suicide planes that were crashing into ships in the Pacific. It starts before then. All right, so here's the origin story of kamikaze. When the Mongols were going over to invade Japan, chances were if they touched land, they were going to probably defeat Japan. Remember, Japan, they're still in like samurai mode during this time period, okay? So the Mongols are probably going to win. They have a massive numbers advantage. They're way more ruthless, okay? But on the way over, a typhoon hits, or like a hurricane hits, as the ships just happen to be heading across to Japan, and all these ships start to sink, all right? And eventually, about 150,000 warriors of the Mongols end up getting, drowning because of this storm. And they call the storm the kamikaze, or like the winds of God, or the divine wind. Basically, some type of spiritual aspect played a role in causing the storm and taking out the Mongols. All right, so the kamikaze, divine wind, a god has sent down a storm to protect Japan or to smite the Mongols for all of their bad deeds that they've done. All right, so that's kind of where it ends for the Mongols. They have Japan, they have China. They try to get Japan, doesn't work out, and then now it's going to be kind of the slow teeter decline until obviously their dynasty falls. So Pax Mongolica tolerated Chinese culture but lived apart from them. Kublai extended the Grand Canal to Beijing. He's going to build highways for trading. No Chinese and top government posts. That's because he believed it would be foreigners from outside countries should be brought in, as they will probably not try to overthrow the Mongolian government. Where if you put Chinese people who want to obviously have their independence back, chances are they're going to try to pull something over and help lead to some type of rebellion. So to help make sure that doesn't happen, we just need to make sure that we put different people in charge. All right, we encourage trade and foreign merchants to live and work in China. The best example of that is that Marco Polo basically, for his time in China, is literally traveling with Kublai Khan. All right, so Marco Polo is literally not working with, but he gets like this personal escort through China. All right, so we know Marco Polo, the explorer. We know him from the game Marco Polo. But basically, he's from Vienna, and he's a merchant, and he travels through the Yuan, China, the Yuan dynasty. He travels through there for off and on for about 20 years. We discovered these things called black stones or pepper. All right, he sees gunpowder for the first time. He sees noodles for the first time. All these different spices and all these different materials that are traded. It's the first time that the West kind of sees them. And as you can see here, I'm traveling with Kublai Khan. Marco Polo is able to travel all over China. All right, so and his journals that he keeps gets published in the West, and obviously that's how people originally get exposed to like Eastern culture and foods and different things from the stories of Marco Polo and his dynasty, his journals that he kept. Um, it is believed by some that the Black Plague was spread by the Mongols in the mid-14th century. Others believe it is merely a severe bacteria strain from the steppes. Basically, as the Mongols went through China, this disease kind of followed them. And it's probably some disease that come from the steppes that other people around them haven't seen or haven't been exposed to. So it does a lot of damage early on. We've talked about disease before a bunch of times and how it's able to. The disease doesn't even need to be that powerful. It just needs to be so different from what that person and their ancestors have faced before, so you can't develop those antibodies. All right. Kublai Khan experienced several humiliating defeats in Southeast Asia late in his life, and some believe that the mystique of the Mongols being unbeatable was gone. All right, so it gave his foes the confidence to overtake the Mongols, and that's kind of what happens. He's failed to take all of Southeast Asia. The enemies start to think that the Mongols are not strong. They start to rise up, and they start to rise up because of the high taxes. So now we have the peasant class revolting. Adding to that, Kublai Khan dies in 1294, and the leaders that come after him are weak. The rebellion breaks out, eventually leading to the overthrow of the Mongol rule, officially ending the Yuan dynasty and introducing the Ming dynasty. All right, and the Ming dynasty is famous for their exploration, right, with Admiral Zhang He, or Zheng Ho, however you want to say it, but we just call it Zhang He. This is the guy that's going to go around, basically explore the world, right? We saw this in the video. He has his treasure fleet. These ships that he has are absolutely massive. You can see here, here's the Mayflower that the Pilgrims came over, and here's the ship that he's traveling on, just one. And so we're moving along here, and we saw this before. He's really just Columbus before Columbus. Okay, he travels the world. He shows off the might of the Chinese Empire. He goes on like 7 voyages here. You can see it's not just him going, but it's like they're definitely flexing on the rest of the world. When they show up to your port, okay, 62 massive ships. You'll have 27 to 30,000 men traveling with them. So it is legit like an army and of people coming into your port. So it really showcases how far in advance China was compared to the rest of the world. All right, so the 6th voyage, this is where basically the Emperor Xi Gachi canceled future trips and ordered ships builders and sailors to stop working, officially closing the door, as we say, we talked about in class. Closing the door from the rest of the world. Basically, China is no longer going to be an open door. They're not going to deal with other people. They figure it's better just to close the door. Okay, we're not going to deal with other countries. We're going to worry about ourselves. We call that isolationists. All right, and the great what if is, what if they would have let these people continue to travel? Okay, many historians believe that if China would have kept the door open, they would have been able to cross either the Atlantic or the Pacific had they wanted to. Basically, they predicted that in the year 1421 would have probably been the first time that China would have been able to discover America. So obviously, if this would have happened, the world would be very different, right? We wouldn't really have a European power. We'd probably have an Asian power. We'll skip that. We'll skip that. And we'll skip that. Skip that. The Forbidden City is Beijing. It's pretty interesting. The Ming start to get kind of paranoid, so they start building this fake capital that ends up becoming the real capital. So the Forbidden City is Beijing, if you want to write that down. I believe it's on the quiz, and I believe you will see that later on in the reading guides as well. So the Forbidden City is kind of the last thing that the Ming do of note. It ends up becoming Beijing. All right, and there it is now. So it was supposed to be like a secret capital, so their enemies would not be able to find them and conquer them, as they were kind of in hiding in this secret place. But it had to be not just the emperor, it had to be the emperor and all of his buddies and the merchants and all the government officials. It had to be secret enough to hold all the power players of China. But that's it, guys. That's the Chinese dynasties in a nutshell. Obviously, with the review day, we'll kind of pinpoint which ones we're going to focus on. But that's everything we need to know about China. That means tomorrow is another day. Talk to you guys later.